If you've ever said, I overthink everything, the fact that you know you do is a strength. Awareness is not the problem, it's directionless awareness. And today I'm going to show you how to pivot from rumination, those repeating thoughts, into experimentation. Because the goal isn't to think less, the goal is to think in a direction that creates momentum.
1, 2, whoo!
Welcome to Authenticity Lab. I'm Dr. Kelsey Miles. I'm a chemistry professor and a musician. This is the podcast you come to when life feels a little off and you want to feel more like yourself. I teach you how to think like a scientist and create like an artist, because to develop the life that you actually want requires you to have critical thinking and also creative insight. Today we're looking at the question, why do I overthink everything? Look, we all exist on a continuum of thinking. There's some of us that overthink every little detail. I exist over on that side of the spectrum. And then there's also people who are able to act very quickly without thinking, and they just do. Neither one is wrong. Neither one is incorrect. But it's important that you know which side of the continuum you tend to exist on. There's some topics in my life where I can quickly just act just because of experience and I don't have to overthink it, usually because I've overthought it in the past. And there's sometimes that I overthink every detail. So let's get clear on what side of the continuum do you exist on most of the time? Are there certain topics in your life, like relationships or your job or career, that you tend to overthink more than other parts of your life? So the problem isn't the thinking. The problem is when it causes paralysis. There's a specific type of thinking that often turns into paralysis. It's called rumination. It's repetitive thinking over the same topic. And what that looks like is you are not moving with your thought in any direction. It's stuck. And when that doesn't cause any momentum, that can get really uncomfortable. And that's what we're talking about today. Here's a post I found on Reddit about this specific topic. They say, I overthink to the point of not doing anything. The past 3 years have been almost a complete waste. I've done practically nothing of worth, not because I don't want to. I would love to get on with my life, to take whatever the next steps are so I can live fulfilled. As of right now, however, I regard myself as a complete failure in almost every area of my life. And here's the key. They say, I can't make any moves toward anything. I've been stuck in a cycle of overthinking and self-loathing. What do I do next? I don't know. Every single thing I come up with is wrong. There's so many more things I want to do, to experience, but my mind has got me in a chokehold and I'm frozen in place, completely stuck. Let's analyze what's going on here. So notice the progression. They had a thought, there was hesitation, inaction, which led them to shame themselves, which caused an identity collapse. Do you hear how they're talking about themselves now? This isn't overthinking. This is rumination plus self-judgment. So the overthinking has caused this cascade into self-judgment and full-on identity collapse. I've said this before in earlier episodes. There's nothing wrong with you. In this case, your brain is just a simulation machine. It's always doing this. It's constantly playing possible futures and replaying past outcomes, and it's trying to predict what will happen next. This is adaptive. This is healthy. This is what keeps us alive. But without some kind of a stopping rule, this will never resolve. As a scientist, when we have a question about some scientific topic, we start to consider hypotheses of what could happen, what the answer could be, and we design experiments based on that. And when our brain is stuck in this overthinking zone, I kind of think of it like a nonstop hypothesis generator, where you're always thinking about the what ifs. The problem is, if you never try an experiment, you get stuck in that what if land. And that's what makes it feel so heavy. That's what makes you end up feeling stuck. So there's two types of overthinking. I talked about this future simulation. These are questions like, what if I fail? What if I choose wrong? What if this ruins everything? And Past rumination is the second type of overthinking. Why did I say that? Why didn't I do that sooner? I should have. Or what if I had done this instead? Both of those types of thinking literally pull your brain out of the only variable, the only thing in your life that you have control over, which is the present moment. This brings me to a lyric in one of my songs called I Go Back. I literally wrote a song about how I was ruminating and I couldn't get off this thought. And in the pre-chorus, I wrote, well, I'm damned if I do and I'm damned if I don't. And I wrote that because I realized I was stuck and there was no amount of rumination that was gonna get me out of it. Once you notice that you're overthinking, then you have a choice. You can either continue to overthink or you can test something. You can experiment. A scientist never sits in the hypothesis phase forever. Eventually, they decide to run a small experiment, and usually thinking of the smallest experiment they can run to move forward with their thought process. So let's walk through my framework. We're going to first calibrate. What specifically are you overthinking? Really get clear. Is it a decision, a relationship, a career move, a conversation? Is this in the future or is this in the past? This is also helpful information. Is it something you're worried about that's coming up, or is it something that already happened that you're afraid you might do again, or you might want to do it differently in the future? And then design an experiment. What's the smallest version of this that I can test? If it's a decision, can you ask some questions, do a little research? If it's a relationship, can you send a text? Can you ask them to meet up for a coffee and just get the date on your calendar? If you're overthinking about career moves, can you start to look on LinkedIn for other job opportunities or start to explore a career fair? If it's a conversation, can you go ahead and type up the draft of an email? It just makes some progress on it. You don't have to hit send. You don't need certainty. You need more data. I want to highlight one thing. This is not me encouraging you to just hustle and push your way through overthinking. This is when overthinking starts to feel heavy that I encourage you to experiment. This isn't blowing up your life and just pushing through no matter what. We still need that creative insight. I call it creating like an artist. We still need to check in with ourselves of how we feel. There's nothing wrong with overthinking, but when it starts to feel heavy, that's when we need to test something small, something doable, something that gets us a little bit more data. That gives your thinking a direction. So now you're starting to develop momentum rather than stuckness. There's nothing wrong with you if you overthink a lot of things. But what happens is if it starts to feel heavy, that's when it can turn into paralysis. And that's what we don't want. None of us want to feel stuck. So how can we take this overthinking and make it feel like momentum? That's where I'm encouraging you to experiment and take the next step. You'll know. That's one thing I know for sure. You will know when overthinking has overstayed its welcome. It will start to feel heavy and you will feel stuck. In that moment, I want you to think, you know what? I need to do something. Develop something small. Test one variable. Gather a little bit more information. That will help you feel like you have direction with your overthinking. Then it doesn't feel stuck. It feels like momentum. And we love momentum way more than stuckness. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Authenticity Lab. Please share this with a friend or family member that you feel like is stuck in overthinking and you think this might help them. First, normalize it and give them the next step that they can take. This isn't about being perfect with your next step, by the way. This is literally the smallest thing you can do to give it direction. And also, if you want a little bit of help with running these experiments in real time, I've got a mini course that is free for you. It's called Life Experiments, and I walk you through my 3 steps: calibrate, experiment, optimize. If you're interested, it's in the show notes below. And just remember, you build self-trust one small experiment at a time. So be bold, be curious, and be you. And I will see you in the next episode.
Yeah, that house will always call you.